You might be shocked at the average daily carbohydrate intake estimations. Let's check them out. So, according to the Institute of Medicine, it's recommended that adults and children over the age of 1 year old consume 130 grams of carbohydrates a day. But the IOM, or the Institute of Medicine, reports that men typically eat 200 to 330 grams of carbs per day, and women eat 180 to 230 grams daily. But my thoughts with that, or my thoughts on that is, I personally think that even at the higher end of the estimations, it's a gross underestimate. Let me explain why. So McDonald's has a nutrition calculator on their website, and I decided to place an order for breakfast and for lunch. And for breakfast and for lunch, I already exceeded 250 carbohydrates. That's just breakfast and lunch alone. That's no snacks, that's not dinner, that's nothing else, just breakfast and lunch. So clearly, this is why most of America and the rest of the planet is darn near obese. With the influx of people working outside of the home or leaving the home daily, we typically eat out a little bit more. And there's a McDonald's on every corner of the planet, so I thought it best to use them as an example. But they're just that, an example, which is why personally, like I said, that estimate is a gross underestimate. We extremely exceed that number. So we've been taught to use carbs for fuel, but unless you're an athlete or a gym rat, I personally think it's nearly impossible to expend the suggested number of carbs or calories daily. I really do. And so that's why I feel like a structured low carb diet, or even an unstructured low carb diet in some form, is a lot better for most individuals, especially those who live a relatively sedentary lifestyle. And that's majority of the people I know. Most people work in an office setting or something along those lines, a customer service center, and they typically don't get that much exercise. So it will probably be beneficial to follow a low carb diet in some form. So before I go any further, I want to say that many of the structured low carb diets are keto friendly in certain phases, while others aren't. But what I want to talk about first is exactly what keto is. So the word keto is an abbreviated form of the word ketosis. And without getting too technical, in a nutshell, to be in a state of ketosis is to be burning fat as your primary fuel source as opposed to carbohydrates. So when I used to follow a very strict keto diet, I used glucose sticks and a glucometer to check whether or not I was actually in a state of ketosis. Now, typically, the lower your carbohydrate intake, the quicker you are more likely to achieve a state of ketosis. And additionally, the frequency with which you stick to a very low carb diet, the more likely you are to maintain that state of ketosis and continue to burn fat as fuel. So while there are many different definitions and forms of low carb diets, a keto diet is one in which you consume a very low amount of carbs and a very high level of fat. So let's discuss 3 popular low carb diets and their keto friendliness. So the zone diet. With the zone diet, it is broken down as a third of your plate should be protein, 2/3 of your plates should be carbohydrates, and only a tiny bit of your plate, or meal should be monounsaturated fats. Now, with this diet, you typically avoid high sugar fruit like raisins and bananas, and starchy vegetables like potatoes and corn. And I personally feel that consuming too many carbs with this particular type of diet, you would still consume too many carbohydrates for it to realistically allow you to achieve a state of ketosis. So, do I think it's a good low carb or moderate carb diet? To a degree, yes, it can be, because you are avoiding certain vegetables or certain high carb fruit and vegetables. However, for those who are looking for a much greater result, I would probably avoid the zone diet. South Beach diet typically touts high lean protein, healthy fats, and some carbs. Now, with the South Beach diet, you can eat up to a total of 6 times a day, every 2 to 3 hours, depending upon the phase of the diet that you're in. So, for example, phase 1 traditionally lasts 14 days, and you eat 3 times a day, and your meals would primarily consist of lean protein, non-starchy veggies, and a small amount of fats and legumes. Now, with this diet, it's not really strict keto, but depending upon what you eat, you may be able to achieve a state of ketosis in the first phase if you seriously limit your intake of the allowed carbohydrates and minimize your protein, because we've already discussed that too much protein eventually breaks down to carbohydrates or breaks down to sugar or glucose. So, like I said, if you limit your intake of the allowed carbs and you increase your intake of the allowed fats, like the fatty fish, for example, like salmon or whatever, and the olive oils and the nuts and the seeds, you may possibly be able to enter a state of ketosis. They also have meals that are specially designed to accommodate those who are interested in following a ketogenic lifestyle during phases 1 and phase 2 to make it a little easier for those if you want to continue to be on the South Beach diet. Atkins is a very keto-friendly diet. The body burns fat for fuel, and many different phases. There are many different phases to the Atkins diet, but the strictest phase is phase 1. And within phase 1, it limits your carbs to like 20 to 25 grams a day, and you can eat from certain food groups such as the healthy fats, proteins, nuts, seeds, and mostly cheese. Well, certain cheeses you can eat. Now, the most lax phase is phase 4 of the Atkins diet. And in phase 4, it allows for 80 to 100 grams of net carbs per day, and you can eat from all food groups. Now, like I stated, this is a very keto-friendly diet or lifestyle because the focus is on higher fat foods, healthy high fat foods, I should say. And you can definitely achieve a state of ketosis within the first phase. And some people can even achieve a state of ketosis in the second phase, which is the phase in which you begin to gradually increase your carbs. I think you can go to like, if the first phase is 20 to 25, you can go from like 25 to maybe even up to 50. So I tried to discuss the diets in the order with which I believe them to be least keto friendly to most keto friendly, or the likelihood with which you achieving a state of ketosis is increased. So that's where I went from zone to South Beach to Atkins. Now, in all honesty, from a personal standpoint, ketosis isn't my current goal right now, but limiting my carbohydrates is. So I typically fluctuate between the South Beach diet, which is very akin to bariatric keto, and Atkins. for the times when I'm limiting my lean protein and increasing my fat intake. I've never personally sought out to try the zone diet per se, but I'm sure that, you know, just from reviewing my macros, my macro logs, I've probably inadvertently followed the diet based on what I've seen so far. So how about you? Do you follow a low carb diet? And if so, what is your preferred low carb diet? Are you aiming for ketosis, or are you just limiting your carbohydrate intake right now? Let me know in the comments. And if you haven't already done so, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.